Good afternoon. I want to thank Robin for including me on this panel. I have no financial interest in the product mentioned. I've been doing PRP for 10 years. I was not overly impressed at the beginning. About 8 years ago, I started incorporating ACell, and that's when I saw a clear difference and started doing quite a bit of PRP and ACell treatments on my patients. But over that time, as Dan alluded to, there are some people who just don't seem to respond well, so I've always been searching for ways to tweak it and improve it. I've tried many things over the years to make PRP and ACell better, and it's not until I started using this system I'm going to describe that I feel like I've found something that gives me a clear advantage. And that involves using stem cells. So when we think about stem cells and androgenetic alopecia, I think we all intuitively know that it holds great promise, but we also know that it's prone to unfounded claims and unfounded exploitation of patients. I just pulled this advertisement off the internet. You can see they're offering an exclusive stem cell treatment, and the good doctor is isolating the stem cells using 10x stereo microscope, which of course is not possible. Stem cell treatments have actually been banned in many countries, and certainly the advertising related to it has been regulated, so we need to be very careful not only what we do, but what we tell our patients so that we're not misleading them. In terms of some regulatory considerations, there's regulatory issues about the advertising claims we make, but in terms of the procedure we do, the FDA makes very clear distinctions, and anything that involves extensive manipulation, whether through chemical reagents or culturing or anything like that that you might do to cells, that's clearly a no-no for the solo doctor to be doing unless it's through some FDA-approved protocol. However, it does allow us, through the practice of medicine, to use stem cells that are minimally processed, same day, same patient, for homologous use, and in this case where we're using hair follicle stem cells to thicken thinning hair, that would be considered homologous use. And anything involving aspiration, cutting, physical separation is okay, which the system I'm going to describe does. As a certified hair nerd, I really like thinking about PRP and stem cells. I think it overlaps someday when we have hair cloning, cell therapy. I think a lot of the same concepts are in play. So I know someday that's going to be more and more important, so I'd prefer to be on the ground floor. Now, when we think of using stem cells to treat androgenetic alopecia, it's completely naive to think that stem cells are actually incorporating into the follicle and taking up residence there and doing something permanent. Probably what's happening is that stem cells are releasing bioactive signals. There are different theories about what pathways may be stimulated. Different experts have opined about what those pathways might be. I don't think it's been firmly established. Now, where do we get these stem cells? One of the obvious sources is fat, adipocyte-derived stem cells. For every one positive report in the literature, I probably know half a dozen clinicians who have tried fat stem cells and report that they didn't get any results. Now, those don't typically make it into medical journals. There's also reports about using bone marrow-derived stem cells in androgenetic alopecia. Even PRP has a very low level of stem cells, but some doctors are looking at isolating and amplifying the amount of stem cells in blood. And recently, numerous products have hit the marketplace with neonatal-derived stem cells. But what about the hair follicle? The hair follicle, of course, is a rich source of stem cells, both mesenchymal stem cells in the dermal sheath and epidermal stem cells in the bulge. And so last year when I was in Italy at the hair meeting there in Venice, I learned about a new device they have, Italian scientist Antonio Graziano developed. And he sort of borrowed this idea from a tool that was being used in the pathology labs. Basically, this is a motor-driven technique to grind and separate tissue to create a cellular suspension. The device is cleared for use in Europe, the United States, Japan, Korea, and numerous other countries are joining the list as well. It uses mechanical rotational cutters to create tissue homogenates, and these contain cellular material, including stem cells. It's been used donor sources have included fat, cartilage, skin, and hair follicles. And there are different reports in the literature. There's, I think, at least a half dozen reports available on PubMed using this technique. In one technique, doctors took from a strip during a FUT procedure, they took the fat and dermis that was discarded after graft cutting, and they put it into the machine, and they observed quicker healing and earlier regrowth. Dr. Graziano has done studies on this cellular suspension. When you feed hair follicles into the device and you get this cloudy cellular suspension, he's done stains showing that we can identify the hair follicle stem cells, the CD44 for the dermal papilla and the CD200 for the epithelial stem cells. Now, Dr. Graziano recommends using several punch biopsies, but you can just as easily use FUE. And one little twist that, as far as I know, I might be unique in doing, I've been using beard FUE as a source of the hair follicles. Now, Dr. Graziano recommends just doing the Regenera by itself. I'm going to show you some pictures where I just did Regenera, but for the most part, when I do a standalone hair thickening treatment, I have been using PRP and ACell because I have a track record with it and I know it works, so this is something I'm doing in addition to that. One of the things I've noticed when doing PRP ACell with Regenera is I'm getting earlier results. So typically, like Dan said, I would tell people not to expect anything for 5 or 6 months, but what I've noticed with the Regenera is that I'm getting earlier results at, say, 3 months. Hopefully Dr. Haber's not in the audience here. He hates it when there's photos like this of different hair lengths. This is before, and then using scalp hair follicles with Regenera and PRP ACell about 6 months later. This is another before and after, and this is using the beard, about 30 beard derived by FUE. This is, again, I think there was about 50 beard FUE I fed into the Regenera, added that to the PRP ACell, and this is at 6 months. Another case, in women, of course, we don't have the luxury of beard using scalp follicles with PRP and ACell at 6 months. This is one that, you know, maybe I would have gotten as good with PRP and ACell, but just so you see my results. So clearly to me, it seems like the Regenera is giving me even better results than my PRP ACell alone. One of the other things I've noticed is that when combined with hair transplants, it seems like I'm getting earlier regrowth. This is 3,000 grafts over the mid-scalp and crown, but at 6 months, typically I would be telling the patients not to expect much, but it seems like we're getting earlier regrowth. In this patient, we put 1,500 grafts just in the crown, but the thickening you see in the mid-scalp is just with the Regenera treatment. That's not grafts. Here's another case. This was 2,700 grafts with the Regenera injected throughout this entire frontal third area before graft placement, and then this is at 6 months. Here's a lady where we threw the kitchen sink at her, put her on finasteride and minoxidil. We did 2,000 grafts down this central portion here where she parts her hair. We did Regenera, PRP and ACell, and 6 months later, you know, how much credit does each one of these treatments get? I don't know, but she's one happy camper. So in summary, I've found that the addition of hair follicle stem cells using Regenera seems to enhance the results that I'm getting with PRP and ACell. It seems like we're getting earlier regrowth with hair transplants. That's something I want to look at closer. I've had no complications or side effects. A couple of disadvantages that I would cite, the cost of the disposable cartridges. It does add more cost. The machine itself is actually very reasonably priced, but the cartridges are not cheap. And there is a certain amount of loss of donor hair follicles, 30 or 40 hair follicles per treatment. So I consider it to be a very promising technique requiring further study. Thank you for your attention.